So let's begin with a little meditation. We're going to quiet our minds first. Try to set a good motivation as much as we can. So relax your bodies, relax your minds. Place your attention on your respiration to begin with. Recognize when you're breathing in, when you're breathing out. Don't just let the stream of discursive thought continue below the surface of your mind. Try to focus on this one object. And then try to withdraw your attention, when your mind's a little bit calmed, to your mental consciousness. The area of your heart, the middle of your chest, your heart chakra. Usually quite closed, according to esoteric Buddhism. Take your attention away from your eyes, your ears, your nose consciousness, tongue, and body consciousness. Just watch the inner dialogue and emotions, perhaps upset, perhaps elated, maybe content, maybe annoyed. Various thoughts as objects, not just emotional tones, but also objects of thought fleeting through the space of your mind. Rather than getting caught up in the various appearances, refocus instead on the nature of the mind within which all of these are arising. subjective mind, which is clear, by nature unstained, transparent, unobstructed, unobstructing. All the various appearances passing through the mind, but try to sense always, keep your concentration on the spaciousness behind them. See if you can sense the presence of the appearance of your ego identity, your sense of self. And the fact that the mind, the mental consciousness is grasping to that as true, observing it and accepting it as true. I think this self-grasping, along with its ally, my self-cherishing thought, have been my real enemies this life. Always wanting to find happiness for myself alone, never to lose. Due to them, due to ignorance and self-cherishing, I've created so much negative karma, made myself unhappy, destroyed whatever virtue I have created. The same with all other sentient beings, all our former mothers. They're under the influence of ignorance, creating negative karma, which have repercussions now and in the future. Our discursive thoughts uncontrolled due to self-cherishing thought and ignorance, becoming the conditions. Even now, whatever happens to us seems so unbearable. The slightest words we take as criticism. The slightest suffering we take as intolerable. If we lose the smallest thing, we find it a great loss. Same with all sentient beings. Whatever status they have right now, whether it be very high seemingly happy and secure and enviable this lifetime, they're still enmeshed. If they haven't controlled the mind, they're still enmeshed in cyclic existence. Worthy of our compassion, just as we have compassion for ourselves. So thinking of the Buddha as the doctor that gave the medicine of the Dharma, and the Dharma teachings that we're about to listen to as the medicine, the Arya Sangha are the beings that can help us take that medicine perfectly. With some confidence that the Dharma jewel really can protect us from suffering. In your mind, taking refuge in that. Think, I'm going to participate tonight. Listen to the teachings. Keep concentration. Listen with a fresh mind, without preconceptions of my ego or using the Dharma to judge others. I'm going to listen in order to overcome my faults. Well, I have this incredibly precious opportunity, so rare, to be free to listen to the Dharma that's expressed explicitly. I'm going to listen to the teachings in order to become enlightened, awakened, for the welfare of all sentient beings. And the self that we think of as doing that action, the agent, from the very start trying to conjoin this action of listening with the perfection of wisdom, recognizing the agent is not truly existent. Merely a name we impute to the body and mind, not the way that it appears to our consciousness as inherently existing somewhere behind the experiencer. The act of listening, merely imputed, can't be found anywhere. Just a name that we impute to the succession of moments of paying attention to what our ear hears, thinking about it. The Dharma that we're listening to, the Dharma teachings, merely imputed to these succession of syllables, written words, and the realizations that they represent. And then relax. Bring your attention back to the present. How's everyone? Good? A little bit rainy today. Okay. So, any questions about the material that we've been studying?
I have one question. Just in the readings, I came across a term called kangyur on page 143.
Uh-huh.
I'm curious. It sounded like it, in context, was something having to do with the sacred teachings.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone know what the kangyur is? Venerable, do you know?
Is it about a whole set of Buddhist teachings?
The whole set of Buddhist teachings?
The kangyur in the
Mm-hmm.
kangyur
Which ones? So there are two in the Tibetan. Maybe you've heard in the Indian in the Indian language in Sanskrit. In the Mahayana teachings, or in the Hinayana teachings, we talk about the Tripitaka. Have you heard of that before?
Yes.
The Tripitaka, the three baskets of teachings.
Yes.
Do you know? Who knows what the Tripitaka is? I forgot your name. Behind Bonnie, what's your name? Carl. Carl. Do you know what the Tripitaka is? It's actually like like our Western languages, three baskets. Karen, do you know what Tripitaka is? Oh, you were looking askance. Okay.
I should know it. I've looked it up in the times.
So the Tripitaka mean the three baskets of Buddha's teachings that talk about the three higher trainings. So the basket of Vinaya, the discipline, or sometimes pronounced Vinaya Pitaka, and the Sutra Pitaka. Mainly, although it talks, the sutras seem to be talking about everything the Buddha said in his own teachings, the Sutra Pitaka mainly give advice how to practice the higher training of concentration, even though they seem to be talking about everything. And then the Abhidharma Pitaka, that talks about higher wisdom. So the three baskets are mainly explaining how to practice the three higher trainings, right? You know this, Don, right? Okay. So if you go to different monasteries, usually they'll have the works of Buddha, the Tripitaka. Let's say in India or Burma or Thailand, they'll have the Tripitaka in Pali or something. In the Tibetan tradition, those texts that were in Sanskrit, that were translated of the let's say the Mahayana Tripitaka, that were translated into Tibetan are called the Kangyur. Ka, the first syllable ka, means speech, or honorific for speech, means the teachings. In this context, it means the teachings of Buddha. Gyur means what, Venerable? Do you know? Means the translations. Translation. So the translation of the speech of the Buddha. And the Tengyur is the translation of the Indian commentaries that existed in ancient times, that were translated into Tibetan. Also, Gyur again means translation. Ten is short for Tenche, which means Shastra. Have you ever heard of that word? The sutras and the Shastras. Have you heard that word? Shastras mean the commentaries that explain how to put the teachings into practice. So in the monasteries, you'll find the Kangyur and the Tengyur. And also you'll find in the Kangyur, you'll also find some tantric teachings that were actually given by Buddha. So some part of the Kangyur, there's sort of a sutra part of the Kangyur and a tantra part of the Kangyur. And for the Tengyur, the commentaries, there's also some commentaries of the tantras. So you'll see often in the monasteries above the altar, because the texts are considered to be. Well, let me ask. Well, if you have, can you put a statue on a book? Is that a proper way to align things? Why not?
Because the text is supposed to be at the top.
Why? Text should be at the top. Why?
The Dharma is the actual refuge.
Dharma's actual refuge. Might be one reason. Usually it says that between the images, the representations of body, speech, and mind, like usually on the altar we have representations of the body, like the statues, the speech, which are the texts, and the mind, which are represented by what, usually? A stupa often. Of those, that which is most immediately important to us is the speech. That which actually in Tantra also, I think there's some esoteric explanation why the speech of Buddha is, the karma of that, created with that, is much more important. Like for instance, keeping one's connection with the guru and so forth, keeping your words and so forth, very, very important for certain realizations in Tantra. But particularly, as Georgie said, because the Dharma is the the representations of the Buddha's speech represent the Dharma also. That's considered to be more important, so they put the text above usually. And then the representations of body and mind below. Sometimes you could put them on the same level, but you wouldn't put a representation of the body on top of the representation of the speech, like that. So that's kind of the meaning of Kangyur. Kangyur kind of means a collection of Buddha's teachings.
Can you say again what the Vinaya Sutra and Abhidharma represent?
Mhm.
I got the sutras concentrated.
The Vinaya or Vinaya it means discipline. So the Vinaya Pitaka are the collections of Buddha's teachings about discipline. Mainly, so it's talking about the vows of the monks and nuns, and especially about the subtle workings of karma. Well, the vows of pratimoksha includes the vows of the layperson also. And the subtleties of karma, such as some of the things we're talking about here. You know, how would one know? Only because Buddha is as we'll see in the, some of you are taking the low-grade class also, would talk about the kind of inferential cognition that arises from knowing that someone is a valid person. You know, to say, how do we know that, some of these things that are said here are true? That by doing certain things, they have certain results? Because the Buddha, who is a reliable, perfect teacher, which we have to verify first in our own mind, taught that. Okay, the Sutra Pitaka mainly teaches the higher training of concentration, although all different kind of subjects are treated in the sutras. And the Abhidharma Pitaka mainly talks about higher wisdom, the training of higher wisdom, because we talk about the three higher trainings: higher training in discipline, ethics in other words, morality, shila, the higher training in concentration, meditative states, and the higher training in wisdom. So all of the Buddha's teachings can be said to be encompassed in the teachings about those three higher trainings. Yes?
So on the altar, is it like if you have a picture of the Buddha on your wall and then you have the text on the altar, is that okay? And also, can you have more than one pictures of Buddhas, like one on top of the other one?
Mm-hmm. I think you can. You can have different, in general, you shouldn't put in a lower position the text, but in the case that you can't sort of hang the text on the wall, that's not really in your own mind disrespecting them, I don't think. But if you can say if you had a cabinet, you would put the texts, it's better to put the texts above rather than the lower shelves. And if you put representations of the body of the Buddha or of your gurus, should the top what should go higher, the Buddhas or the teachers, or what? What goes above? Shakyamuni goes first, then the gurus below. No. What goes on? The gurus go first, then the representations of the tantric representations of Buddha. In the center, so if you're doing it centralized, so in the center should be the gurus, and on the periphery the deities, and then the representations of the Nirmanakaya form of Buddha, say, of the Buddhas, like the 5 Buddha families and so forth, they would be outside of that, like on the refuge tree. First in the center are the gurus, and above them are the gurus, and then below them or around them are the tantric deities. Outside of them are the Buddhas. You follow what I'm saying? And then outside of those are what? Or below those? The Bodhisattvas. Below those or outside of those? Which one come first?
Solitary realizers then.
No, there are two, the Pratyeka Buddhas and the solitary realizers. Which one would come higher? Which are considered more solitary realizers. They actually take longer to achieve their goal. They have a greater accumulation of merit, and they have greater realization in general than the Shravakas. So, and then below those Shravakas, or outside of those Shravakas, like the 16 Arhats. In Mongolia, I heard that Bakula Rinpoche will be giving a empowerment into the 16 Arhats. Bakula Rinpoche is considered to be the emanation of one of the 16 Arhats. 16 elders, they say, Neten or Staivira. And then below those, then the Dakas and Dakinis, and below those, the protectors, so the supramundane protectors. So all of we'll be talking a little bit about protectors today in some of the verses. Okay.
This book,
What's that book?
no, this is the Essence of the Heart Sutra.
The Essence of the Heart, the Dalai Lama's teaching
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
They talk about the come here and the tangier here at about page 66, and so.
There you
I
go.
have that in my book.
Okay.
You know, just-
There you go. If you have that, you can check that. Okay. Anyone else have some question? Have you been reading ahead?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Some have. Maybe not everyone, but some.
George,
I'm listening.
I would like for us to start saying Vajrasattva with every verse. I just-
You'd like to say Vajrasattva. You're welcome to say Vajrasattva with every verse. Yeah. Someone might want to say Yamantaka with every verse or something.
Okay, Yamataka, whatever. But.
Here, the actual text doesn't have anything else in it, so we're just going by the
We're gonna
text.
go through the text. Okay, because I have this need to say Vajrasattva as I go through this.
Okay, you can be saying Vajrasattva continuously. I think that's a good idea
That's good too, but-
in your mind. It's probably very, very useful. Okay. Okay, so let's go on. Last time, I think we finished verse 30. Is that right? Just finished verse 30? When I delight in afflictions and am greatly distracted, is the wheel of my own evil deeds turned upon me from not meditating on impermanence and the shortcomings of cyclic existence. We talked about this last time, right? From now on, I shall increase my dissatisfaction for cyclic existence. I think I might have mentioned then, Lama Zopa Rinpoche mentions sometimes the reason when, in the morning, that even though the alarm clock goes off or whatever, that we don't get up. It's just we're content to sit in our warm bed. Or you can take, by analogy, you can just think of, ourself not going out and actually doing more Dharma practice, actually confronting our delusions and so forth while we have the opportunity. The reason for that is because we haven't contemplated the shortcomings of cyclic existence. We kind of think being in the warm bed or having everything go right for a certain period of time is okay, and we're secure in that. But all of that's impermanent, right? So it's very important. And the Lan Rim is taught again and again the need every morning to meditate on impermanence and to recognize what, even if we were to live a long life, how this life is fleeting every second and how short it will be. So 31, when things get worse, no matter what I do, it is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for disparaging moral causality and dependent origination. From now on, I shall strive to accumulate merit. So here, sometimes I like to give some alternate translations looking at the Tibetan. It says, the same word, here it's translating as disparage. I don't know if it's been that way all the time. Might have been pretty much. When I don't take seriously, it's ketu sepa, when I kill the difference, in other words, here it says moral causality. Leidang gyude kedu sepai. Lei means actions. Gyude means cause and effect. Actions and causes and effects. So it doesn't actually say the words dependent arising, but one can kind of infer that from that. When we don't pay attention not only to impermanence, but then we don't pay attention and we don't consider important the law of karma, the inner law of cause and effect, the psychic level of cause and effect. One of the consequences, and many consequences of that, but it's saying here, when things get worse, no matter what I do. So what's the implication of that? Say things, you're trying to, you have some problem, and you try to do something outside to get rid of that problem, and it doesn't go away. Oftentimes that's because we haven't observed, we're looking to try to find a cause to rectify the situation, often outside, I think, rather than looking to find the inner cause. Right? When things get worse, no matter what I do, it is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for disparaging, ignoring the law of cause and effect, the fact that things arise in dependence on causes and conditions. So from now on, I shall strive to accumulate merit. So one of the verses in the 7-point training of the mind, maybe you know, when it talks about the 4 means of transforming different conditions into the path. One of them is when things go wrong, when you're not finding what you need, conditions and so forth, to try to accumulate the merit to do so, rather than feeling frustrated or trying to accumulate the outer causes, get more friends or get more money or, whatever. Due to our not paying attention to cause and effect in the past, we haven't abandoned non-virtue, so we're going to have problems now. We haven't accumulated virtue to any appreciable extent, so our collection of virtue is very small. So this is the real inner reason why things don't go right, even no matter what we do outside. Did some of you read Geshe-la's commentary here? Just see what Geshe had to say here. This verse addresses the situation in which everything goes against you, no matter what you do. In your personal, business, or spiritual life, you are unable to succeed in anything. This type of misery is the result of disregarding the laws of karma and cause and effect. So that literally, that's what the text says, karma and cause and effect. It doesn't say dependent arising. And performing non-virtuous actions that harm others. Therefore, you should resolve from now on to be patient with others, behave virtuously, and understand the laws of reality, the truth of suffering and its cause. If we strive to do only what is right, not to harm any sentient beings and to work for their benefit, we must expect to meet many hardships, which, however, we should look upon as opportunities to practice patience. From now on, we should keep in mind karma and its results and act accordingly. So, one of the things that the teachers often say is that if we want to be happy, we have to create the causes of it. We all want to be happy. But usually what we're doing is we're seeking outer causes, outer conditions for what we consider to be happiness and security. Recognizing that those outer conditions can give some kind of relief. They can be conditions for our other karma to ripen, isn't it? But they can't themselves, the outer things that we do, can't actually create the causes for happiness. Like, say, collecting money or building a house or finding the right friends or whatever. Even you find new companions, there's no guarantee that you're going to be happy with them, is there? What do you think? No guarantee. Depends on your karma. Even you collect, lots of resources, there's no guarantee that you're going to be happy because of that. I like to think of it like this. You've heard, you know well the law of cause and effect, but some people, just as to introduce it sometimes, I explain, say someone is on the street Like we think of criminals sometimes as, how could they get this success? How do they have this happiness? It doesn't seem right. They steal a car, they have a car, or the mafia chieftain with all the money and power and everything. How is that? How can that be? What do you think, Don? How could they have happiness if they're only creating non-virtue? They must have created virtuous karma, possibly with generosity. There could be other things also. Like people look up to them and so forth. They have certain charisma because of maybe guarding their speech in some past lives. So what they do now sometimes is just the cooperative condition for their virtuous karma of the past to ripen. Sometimes bad things happen to good people, isn't it? I know there's some book, I think there's some book on the bestseller list like that, when bad things happen to good people or something. How does that happen? From a Christian tradition, that's one of the great enigmas, isn't it, in philosophical questions. And of course, there's a solution to that also, that's God's testing and so forth. But from a Buddhist perspective, how do we understand it? How can bad things happen to good people? The ripening, even though they're good now, they're creating the causes of happiness in the future, but still, negative karma from the past can ripen. So as trying to practice the mind training, what we try to do is, even when bad things happen, we hear criticism, or when we lose, or we get sick, or whatever, to try to see that in a positive light, rather than creating more negative karma, to suffer the same thing in the future. And when we don't have what we want, to try to create the causes for it. So that's kind of one of the implications, I think, of this advice of this verse.
George, when you talk about creating the causes for it, aren't the actions that we're doing now causes for things much distant in the future? So how can we create the cause of something that we want now, or need in our lives now?
Well, we can start to, there are different ways. Some karma that we create this lifetime could ripen this lifetime. In general, the karma that we create with our parents when we're young can ripen later in life because they're heavy objects of karma. But the karma that we create with respect to the gurus and the Buddhas could even ripen sooner because they're the heaviest objects of karma. I think it's said that, like in the practice of guru devotion, if you see your guru as the Buddha, that is to say, not a physical representation, you just say, I don't care about these people, these gurus, they're corrupt, but Buddha is my guru. You can receive very powerful blessings that way in your mind stream to make transformation, and you create some virtuous karma that could ripen in the not so distant future. But if you have a physical representation who is guiding you, giving you advice, and say, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that, if you take them as your teacher, you receive very fast blessings. If you can see that physical representation as enlightened also as a manifestation of Buddha, you receive powerful and quick blessings. And because of it's said that the kindness of the gurus, because they're leading us to enlightenment, because of that kindness, they're the heaviest objects of karma. So that karma could ripen even this lifetime. That's why it's possible, I think, in the practice of Tantra, besides other kinds of practices also, besides collecting merit through bodhicitta and other things, why it's possible to find karma that ripens this lifetime, that especially if we're practicing virtuously, dedicating it, that can lead to realizations quickly, not necessarily in distant lifetimes. Also by purifying, like say doing tonglen, changing our attitude inside, then that can help to purify very heavy negative karma that can be preventing us from finding happiness, achieving our goals. That it can purify negative karma that might be impediments to our life, to our wealth, and so forth. So I think both of those together can bring about, in general, the ordinary karma that we create may not ripen this lifetime, but especially with respect to the gurus and in the practice of Tantra especially, or in the Bodhisattva path with bodhicitta motivation, it can ripen more quickly. both in purifying negative karma and accumulating virtue.
And when somebody talks about trying to remove obstacles by doing certain practices, they're not talking about the same thing as trying to remove, purify bad karma.
Yeah, it can be. Like, for instance, there are different kinds of obstacles. There can be, just like when we talked about the maras, there are outer maras and inner maras. There's some outer obstacles, and there are solely inner obstacles also. Even the outer obstacles, their appearance depends on our karma. They're like, say, the rats that are eating your food, or the people that are giving you a hard time. By purifying the karma that you've created with them in the past, in, say, doing Tonglen, and other kinds, like in Chö practice, the practice that was done in many of our gurus, Lama Zopa Rinpoche likes to practice very much. You know Chö? You know what Chö is? Venerable, do you know, how do you translate Chö? Chö means to slay or to cut. And it kind of means, sometimes it looks like it means, you would pronounce it chud. It's not pronounced chud.
Spelled C-H-O-D?
Yes, that's one way to pronounce it, yeah. But it's pronounced chud. That means to slay the ego, to cut off the ego. So it might be practiced in a very fearful place, like a cemetery, where you go to that, and the ego can manifest due to fear very strongly. Actually, you can practice Chö in the just in everyday life, because a lot of times when people confront you, the ego comes up very, very positively. You say, this is the time I have to practice Chö. Chö means to use that situation to develop the two bodhicittas. It's a way of mind training also. To cut off the self-cherishing by giving the victory to the others. In Chö, sometimes one imagines giving one's own body to the spirits in the cemetery, in the charnel ground, offering to all the different spirits. And also at that point, meditating on selflessness. When the ego arises, recognizing how strongly this appears as real, but if one's familiar with emptiness, how it is actually empty of that appearance that it has of being real. So that's one way of seeing the object of negation very, very clearly. So cutting off the outer obstacles by offering to them, and there are various kinds of ways like this. One of our teachers, Geshe Rapton, he used to, when he was criticized at the monastery, when people talked about him behind his back, or because he was a very gifted teacher, maybe he had many students, and people out of envy might have talked about him behind his back. It's said in the monasteries that's one of the best ways, when people talk about you behind your back, it's one of the best ways of purifying your negative karma, of verbal karma. And so what Geshe-la would do is he would invite them to his room, to his little living quarters, for a meal, and he would offer them momos. You know momos? Like most, in the Tibetan monastery, the most tasty, nicest thing you can offer someone is a meal of momo. So he'd offer the people who were criticizing him and behind his back, he'd offer them momos. Not like kind of, I don't know, it could be kind of artificial, oh, here, thanks so much for criticizing me. You jerk. Or give them bad tasting momos or something, right? Put some hot pepper in them or something like that. Not like that, but recognizing that they were benefiting him, and in so doing, purifying that negative karma. When we start to recognize, it's not easy, I think, when we start to recognize really sincerely the self-cherishing thought as our enemy, that's a big turning point. That starts to purify these obstacles, outer and inner. And there are particular ways of practicing to overcome the outer hindrances or obstacles and the inner ones. Like that, this is mainly what we're talking about. So let's go on. So 32. When all the religious rites I perform go awry, it's the wheel of my own evil deeds that returned upon me. for looking to the dark quarters for help. From now on, I shall turn away from the dark quarter.
Geshe doesn't say this in his commentary, but when I was reading that, I just wanted the dark quarter, instead of just like being evil spirits that we label evil spirits, that was similar to the verse prior to that, where the dark quarter is really kind of like relying, turning to like ordinary appearances and external things. Is that?
Well, here, what they've translated as dark quarter doesn't have to be translated that way. You can just say the black side. Nak chok. Chok means direction or side, or nak means black or dark. So it means, in this sense, there's no pejorative sense. Sometimes in modern political correctness, one can't say badness is connected with blackness, right? And whiteness is good. But in general, this is the language that's being used. So just to recognize that when it says the dark quarter, it's talking about what we've relied on before, our baser instincts and negativity and so forth, and bad friends and so forth.
He says evil spirits and dark forces, though, when he in his commentary.
Yeah.
He's really going to.
Right, that's what I say. Our baser instincts, evil friends, evil forces.
But does it have to be really evil? I mean, or is it just dark because it's ignorant? Like.
Well, just let me explain first, Karen. What I was saying is, in general, the dark side means all of these different things. Here, in this context, when it says looking to the dark side for help, that means instead of seeking, solutions to our problems by looking for help from the white side, from the Dharma. We've sought help from either by doing rituals. Sometimes people invoke protectors, worldly protectors. We don't have so much of that here, I don't think, do we? I don't know. Italy is quite... Anyone here Italian? Italy is kind of...
I'm
Sicilian, okay, even better. Oftentimes people they pay others to put evil curses on someone. They go to someone and they do kind of, and we have in this hemisphere also in what is it, in the Caribbean and voodoo and so forth. If you actually investigate, there are some things some forces that these things can do if done in certain ways. So obviously in doing those kind of things and relying on the dark side for protectors or bad friends or evil, calling up the mafia to get your way or whatever, the spiritual mafia or the non-spiritual mafia, the psychic mafia, that's what's meant here by relying on the dark quarter for help. So whatever we do, the rituals that we perform, say calling upon the white forces, if they don't have any efficacy, it's because we haven't really created the karma for them to be effective. We've relied on the black side in the past. So from now on, I shall turn away from the dark side, okay? The evil empire. Okay? That makes sense, doesn't it? Ronald Reagan would be happy to hear that. Wasn't he the one that used that term? Evil empire?
I think so.
Okay.
George Lucas, too.
And George Lucas. Oh, no, that's George Lucas. That's all right. Darth Vader. Right. So, when my 33, when my prayers to the three jewels go unanswered, it is the wheel of my own evil deeds turned upon me for not believing in Buddhahood. From now on, I shall rely on the three jewels alone. So we haven't, here, Sangepa, here they take as Buddhahood. Does Geshe take it as Buddhahood in his commentary, or the Buddha?
Well, non-virtue.
Refuge, he kind of interprets it as taking real refuge.
Mm-hmm. He says here, you may wonder why your requests are not fulfilled if you pray to the triple gem and blame the three jewels. Such thinking is wrong. The three jewels which we take refuge, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. The Buddha is the perfect teacher, the Dharma is a perfect teaching, the Sangha is the assembly of religious persons. So here, the way that the translators, the Western translators have taken it, sounds like it just means Buddha or Buddhahood. But I think it's referring to that whole complex of taking refuge in the three jewels. When my prayer to the three jewels go unanswered, it's the wheel of sharp weapons coming back for not believing in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, not having confidence. Iche in Tibetan, the word that's in the Tibetan text, means when we talk about the different kinds of faith, one of the kinds of faith is one that's dependent on conviction. So here it means not just believing, but having conviction in them. Conviction can be of varying degrees, but sometimes conviction, faith of conviction, is not yet a realization. It's just like a correct belief, but leaning in the right direction, a correct belief. From now on, I shall rely on the three jewels alone. So, sometimes, people also denigrate in the Christian tradition. They denigrate God or whatever because he didn't answer their prayers, or bad things happened. You hear about people giving up religion for that reason, isn't it? Do you hear that? Something bad happens to them, or I gave up religion because this or that. So this is the reason for that is because we didn't really rely on the triple gem in the past. And so whatever kind of prayers we make now are not going to have much efficacy. 34, when conceptual constructions rise up as pollution, demons, and evil spirits, it is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for sinning against the gods and mantras. From now on, I shall crush all conceptual constructions. So here, Geshe Darge's, the translation that John Landau and Alex Berzin and the Translating Bureau did many years ago, although they try to put a bit of commentary into that. It's not literally what it says here. They say, when prejudice, polio, or strokes have us crippled, and external forces or harm rise against us, this is the wheel of sharp weapons returning full circle upon us from wrongs we have done. Till now we have collected vast stores of non-virtue by breaking our vows and offending protectors in our practice from Guru devotion to Tantra. Hereafter, let's banish all prejudiced views. So that's a little closer, I think, the way that they've translated here. Namtok dipdang dondu langbese. So at the time of the arisal, or arising, when our conceptual thoughts are namtok, that means when we're doing our meditation, all this discursive thinking that's going on, our opinions, our conceptions. This person is right. This person is right. This person is wrong. I'm right. This is all namtok. I remember Lama Yeshe many times. Have you ever heard? Did you ever hear Lama say namtok?
Yes.
Namtok. Oh, it's just your idea. It's just your conception. Usually, it's related with conceiving things to be truly existent. So when our namtok, when our discursive thoughts or conceptual constructions rise up as dipdang dondu. Don is definitely spirits and kind of demons. And dip has different connotations. It can mean pollution. It can mean kind of dip. When people have strokes in Tibet, they call it drip, due to some kind of spirits. So it can be, or sometimes can mean polio. So they've taken it that way. In this text here, he says, as pollution, demons, and evil spirits. So it means when our own mind, our own preconceptions, our opinions, our opinionated mind, our selfish mind rises up as different kinds of forms. It could be external demons. It can be pollutions. It can be some kind of hindrance to us. This is the wheel of sharp weapons coming back for sinning against the gods and mantras, it says there. Here it means, I think it means negative karma that we create with respect to the deities, whether it be in Tantra, we didn't keep the commitments, we took initiations of various deities, or the worldly deities, protectors and so forth, negative things that we've done. And also negative deeds that we've done with respect to taking tantric vows, breaking our commitments. Sometimes in Tibet, not so long ago, here also in India, some of the Tibetan lamas had occasion to have strokes and so forth, and sometimes it was explained that this was a result of their improper practice of protectors and so forth, various worldly protectors, relying upon them with not the best of intentions. So from now on, I shall crush all conceptual conceptions. What is it? Conceptual constructions. Conceptual conceptions. Dani namtok tamche shombarja. I shall crush them, I'll break them. Banish, here it says in the other text. Dorji, how much time again?
3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay. So, yeah, done.
Can you explain to me a little bit about what's meant by vows made to worldly God? Worldly God? As opposed to the supermundane?
I don't know if it says, did Geshe say vows made with respect to that? Yeah.
Made to worldly God.
So sometimes, here the gods don't have to be only like of the desire realm gods, the devas. Sometimes, like, you can make vows, like in Hinduism and Vedic tradition, you can make vows to Brahma or other kinds of Vedic gods. They themselves are within cyclic existence. They may be of the Deva realm. They may actually be spirits. They may be pretas, different kinds of spirits. In the Bon tradition of Tibet, that's one of the ways that one got a lot of power. Also in our shamanistic traditions of the West, of the Americas, South America, other shamanistic religions, there is some power that can be attained through that kind of knowledge of invoking spirits, what one might call gods, divinities of some kind, and offering them something. Sometimes it involves things that they like very much, like blood, and offering them things that they want, that they make known to you, either to other people of the past, that tradition come down to the future of how to invoke them. But if you don't please them, they can cause great harm, as if you break your promises, if you displease them. Serkun Senchab Rinpoche used to say, relying upon protectors was very, very dangerous. It wasn't something that, like Westerners like to think that this is a great practice, doing these protector pujas and everything. Sometimes His Holiness also has said this sometimes can miss the point. We take more refuge in these protectors than we do in the triple gem, especially if they're worldly protectors. It is possible to call for help to various kinds of protectors or worldly spirits, but not to rely on them ultimately. But because if you displease them, Serkun Rinpoche used to say, it's like your relationship with a little tiger cub. At first they come and they lick your feet, they're very cuddly, and you're creating a connection with them. Then when they get bigger, what happens? If you displease them, one swipe of the claw, of their paw, can destroy you. So that growing, in this context, means you're growing karmic connection with them. So the greater your karmic connection with these various deities, the greater the danger if you break your commitments to them. If you don't offer your cup of blood to them that week, or you don't do what pleases them. Should we take a break? Have a cup of blood? A cup of tea. Let's take a short break.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, Beth, you had a question.
Well, I was just going to say that I stupidly and naively took an initiation a few years ago. I just met this teacher, and the very first day took this initiation
Mhm.
because I had this strong emotional feeling.
Mhm.
And then I realized, because I had never done that before in my life, I realized afterward, and I did the initial practices,
Mhm.
but then I stopped. And then I realized what a huge thing I had done.
Right.
This was a huge thing.
Right.
And, I've grappled with that since then and haven't gone forward in that path because I realized that I really didn't know anything about the path. And so I realized that it was my own fault that I did that, but I've also seen that happen with other people. And I think in general, it's good, like, for the teachers in paths to, like, have some responsibility toward, like, new people, to maybe not let them take initiations. I mean, I think
Right.
it's a subtle thing. Because
Of course, yeah.
someone's overwhelmed and they feel like, oh, well, this is going to be my
I agree with
path
you.
of life,
I agree with you.
know?
But one can't really judge because sometimes, if if the Buddha was actually here, he might say, come, take this
Right.
initiation. He may see that you have some karmic connection. Oftentimes, many times, my teacher Lama Yeshe, when I was at different of our centers, I was the spiritual coordinator, and before Lama gave a course, there would be certain requirements to take a tantric initiation. You would have had to have taken refuge for at least 6 months, done a course in the Lan Rim, and had various other qualifications. And they would be very strict, for the course. And then at the last minute, someone would come up, some old fellow or young lady or someone, when they would want to take the course, and I would come to Lama because they sort of, please ask Lama if I can take the course. I would go expecting Lama to say no, they don't have the qualifications, and he said, of course, dear. There are many doorways to the Dharma, he said. So sometimes I think in general that's a very good advice, but sometimes what you did was not necessarily stupid. It may have been at the time, not the right time for you to practice at that level, but sometimes, obviously, that's impelled you to go back and look for the bases. So for some people, being tossed in the deep end, that's how my grandpa taught us to swim, or not to swim, took us out in the rowboat in Lake Geneva. Here you go. Did anyone learn to swim that way? I don't swim well to this day, but anyway, I had to learn after that. But sometimes being tossed in the deep end, suddenly you've got these commitments and you realize you don't have any bodhicitta. You don't even know what renunciation is. You don't have any understanding of emptiness. So you have to go back and learn about it because you have a sense of responsibility. So that can be good. Of course, in the hands of just ordinary people, like myself, for instance, if I were to give some tantric initiation not having any kind of quality, that would be completely inappropriate, because not knowing what the other people's minds are like, can be very, very dangerous. So it requires really the tantric initiations. It became very popular in Tibet to take tantric initiations, to practice tantra, but to really practice, to really be a tantric teacher, you have to have immense qualities to be really a tantric guru. And yeah, so I wouldn't say what you had done was stupid. It might have been, it may not have seemed like the right time, but in your case, it sounds like maybe whatever teacher might have had some particular reason for, luring you, like the male siren, into taking the initiation, and then you got connected and studied more.
Well, actually, it wasn't a tantra initiation, but
Yeah.
nevertheless.
Okay,
Yeah.
whatever. Okay, so let's go a little bit further. So 35, when I wander far from home like a helpless person, it is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for driving spiritual teachers and others from their homes. From now on, I shall not expel anyone from their home. Okay, so again, when it talks about the gurus, the spiritual teachers, this is the heaviest objects of karma. Like in the past, like the Chinese, when they expelled the Dalai Lama and others from Tibet. Just imagine the kind of wandering that they're going to do not only in other lifetimes as humans, but throughout the 6 realms because of upseeding, heavy objects of karma. Usually, with respect to karma, heaviest objects are the gurus and the manifestations of Buddha that teach us. The next heaviest objects of karma are our own parents and those that have been very kind to us. We were talking about this. Some of you attended the teaching that Lama Zopa Rinpoche gave recently on the 16 points. Remember some of these points about respecting the parents and so forth that were instituted by the king Songtsen Gampo, one of the first Tibetan kings in historical times. One of some of these points that he tried to institute as general rules for the population, the humans, were to respect those that are higher than ourselves, because they're especially our parents, because they're very heavy objects of karma. They've been very kind to us, whether we recognize it or not. Seems to be kind of like something that's modern people are a bit oblivious of. Parents, my parents, kind? Are you kidding me? Some people will say, or especially if they've had bad conditions with their parents, they've been molested, or their parents seem to ignore them, or whatever. But their parents gave them the incredible preciousness of this body, which again they may not recognize. They may say, "This life, this is miserable. What did they give me?" Because they don't recognize. It doesn't mean just because they perceive it that way, in their ignorance, it doesn't mean that that's the way it is. This life as a human is incredibly precious. So to have been given the condition of people raising us, they fed us, they gave us a certain amount of education, and here we are now due to their kindness. So they're very, very heavy objects of karma. So if we were to expel them from their homes, or the gurus or others, because it says spiritual teachers and others, when I wander far from home like a helpless person, Wangme Chesu Kyampese. This is what, 35, right? Wangme Mita Chesu Kyampese. At the time of wandering in sort of distant places, Chesu, abroad, like a helpless person, like a beggar. This is the karma of forcing out from their places the lamas and so forth. So now I will not uproot from their location anyone. So try to recognize that. Do you ever have that experience of wandering helplessly? No? No? Maybe you will. Sometimes seems like. Okay. So 36, when calamities occur like frost and hail, what that means is when calamities like frost and hail occur, right? I don't know, it does sound a little bit funny when you say, when calamities occur like frost and hail. Almost sounds like calamities.
Or like frost.
Yeah. So when calamities like frost and hail occur, it is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for not properly guarding my vows and moral conduct. From now on, I shall keep my vows and moral conduct pure. So some of these things you might say, well, who could say? But it could have been anything that caused that, frost and hail. But these are, I think all of these particular points were taken from various teachings of Buddha, where Buddha prophesied that particular kinds of actions do have environmental effects or other kind of effects on us. This is not just the imagination of the author or trying to derive some logical connection from them. They were taught by the Buddha, these particular karmic connections. Interesting, the word for hail is Sera, which is the name of one of the monasteries. Sometimes, Sarah J. Monastery, Sarah May. Sarah Monastery, I can't remember exactly the legend. I've heard that the name arose because the place where it was going to be built was a place where a big hailstorm came, something like that. So this is the same word.
I was reading it, they had a hailstorm with hail the size of softballs in Oklahoma. And I went, oh my word.
Whoa,
That would
softballs.
That would be big hail.
That'd be awfully big hail. Hail to the chief. Okay. Se ser lasok mido jungwe se. So when undesirable things such as, it says calamities, when undesirable things such as frosted hail occur, this is the Wheel of Sharp Weapons coming back from not guarding appropriately, sulshin. My damsik means samayas and sulchim means ethics. What does he translate it as here? Not guarding my vows and moral conduct. Literally, damsik is, for those of you who've taken some tantric things, it means samaya. Those things that you promise to do. Usually vows, although it's not completely like that, usually there's a difference between vows and words of honor. Words of honor, samaya, mean things that you promise to do in general, although there's certain things you promise not to do. And vows are things you take a commitment not to do. You restrain yourself, like tie yourself from doing those. So it's talking about not appropriately guarding those. Su shin masung be. Now I will make pure my words of honor and so forth. Here it says, I shall keep my vows and moral conduct. It doesn't say that. It just says, damsik lasok sangba cha. I shall act purely. I will make pure, create pure vows, promote pure vows and so forth. So when there are different kinds of negativities that we can create. Some of them are called natural negativities. What the Buddha called rangshin kanamatoa in Tibetan. I don't know the Sanskrit word. Kanamatoa in Tibetan means kind of wrongdoing or evil. Rangshin means natural. So natural wrongdoings, the Buddha taught, were things that whether you took a vow or not to do them, you're creating negative karma, like killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and so forth. Then there was another category of negativities, kanamatoa, the Buddha talked about, called chepa kanamatoa, which means wrongdoings due to formulation or due to the rules that the Buddha set down. Like, for instance, the Buddha said the monks and nuns should not do certain things. Even though those things were not naturally negative, because they had taken on that particular commitment, breaking those commitments became negativities. So here it's talking about both kinds of things that, when we don't keep our morality, things that we've promised to do and promised to avoid, different kinds of outer conditions can occur, such as having a period of frost and hail and so forth. So in order to purify that, to recognize that as the result of our own past negative karma, even if there might have been other causes of it, karmic causes of it, to recognize that in your own continuum, and to try to experience that what might otherwise be suffering or adverse condition with a mind of at least equanimity or even joy, to transform that into the path by imagining, especially if one's doing Tonglen, imagining, by my experiencing this, may I, which is due to my negative karma of the past, may others who have that same negative karma in their continuum to suffer in the future, may they be purified. So by bearing it that way, putting the suffering on the self-cherishing thought rather than on the self. Remember what we're talking about before, not thinking, just I'm going to kill you, kill yourself or martyr or whatever. One has to find that sensitive, vital point, the self-cherishing thought, and make it erode away due to experiencing this suffering. When I, a greedy person, lose my wealth, it is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for not giving charity or making offerings to the three jewels. From now on, I will zealously make offerings and give charity. So here again, this is one of the famous observations that come in the sutra. I think there's a famous verse that Nagarjuna quotes from the sutras that says, due to charity, resources; due to morality, high status. In other words, this is something, these are hidden phenomena that we can realize, right? At first we don't realize that giving brings back resources. We think, the miserly mind thinks giving depletes your resources, right? Some of my rich friends are the stingiest people. Sometimes the poorest people I know are the most generous. They give you anything. It's not always the case, of course. Sometimes I think people in the world think that the reason they got rich was because they didn't deplete their resources. I certainly have that kind of segment of my mind that still thinks that way. So the Buddha taught that the causes of resources were giving, and the causes of high status, that is being born as humans and gods, was observing morality, that is not creating negative karma, creating virtuous karma to be born as a human or the gods. And of course the other 6 perfections, those are the first 2 perfections, right? Generosity, morality. Patience gives what? You know what the result of patience is? A pleasant appearance, right? And so forth. The other perfections have particular ripening effects from them. So here it's saying, when we encounter not having things, not having resources, which is this 37, right? Dupa chela jorpe pongbe se. At the time of being deprived of, being deprived of wealth, yet having great desires. In other words, not experiencing this with equanimity. Jindang konchok chöpa mach magi pe. It's a wheel of sharp weapons coming back from not having created charity or made puja to that which pleased the triple gem. Because that's the word, that's the meaning of puja, right? Do you know, when we talk about puja, Lama Chopa, you know Lama Chopa puja? Chopa means the Sanskrit word puja. Do you know that word, puja? Bonnie, do you know that word? What does it kind of mean to you? Kind of means, it seems like it means offering. In Buddhism, the etymology of puja is to please. So it means to please the object of the puja, like say the triple gem or the gurus. And although we might think, in certain contexts, we might think that they'll be pleased by us making offerings, that's not the main thing that pleases them. The main thing that pleases them is us creating virtue. That's why in all of the pujas, like the 7-limb puja, all of the ritual offerings to the triple gem always have those 7 elements. You know what they are, the 7-limb puja? What are they? Prostration. Yeah. Prostration, first of all, paying homage. So prostration, confession comes next or no? Offering, confession, rejoicing. So it can be in different orders, in different contexts. Requesting the Buddhas to remain and to turn the wheel of Dharma. And 7th? Dedicating the merits. So Maitreya, the Buddha explained also that those 7 were like the essential elements to create all the virtuous karma that's necessary in order to make spiritual realizations on the path. Those are the essential elements. So that's why all of the pujas engage in those. Offering particularly helps to overcome the negative karma we've done due to miserliness and to create merit with respect to the merit field. And that's what pleases the gurus. That's what pleases the Buddhas. It's not like Vajrayogini is up there thinking, I can't wait to get that mango, or the cherry cheesecake they've offered. I'm really pleased. And then if you only offer a piece of toast or something, not pleased. It's not like that. It depends upon our state of mind. So here it's It's making puja to the triple gem, making charity, or chuba doesn't mean only offering, it also means these 7 limbs. So from now on, I will strive in both puja and offerings and in charity. Yeah, so when we don't, this is like also one of the essential things all the time in the mind training. Whenever we recognize things going wrong, when people abuse us, criticize us, and we get angry, we should recognize, instead of getting angry at the outer person, this is giving us an opportunity to look at our own mind and to purify our negative karma. When we're deprived of our wealth, when our wealth goes away, this is obviously a result of our not having accumulated enough merit of resources in the past. So to strive, to use that opportunity in a positive way, to cause you to strive to create the causes of wealth. Make sense? What do you think, Bunny? Crystal clear. Okay, crystal. I don't have to say crystal clear, just crystal, right? Quite a few years ago, when we were in Italy, Institute of Lama Tsongkhapa, one time Lama Zopa Rinpoche gave the last part of the wealth deities. Were any of you here there? Maybe Oma, did you come to that? No, maybe not.
Not when Lama Zopa was teaching. I was in Italy, but
The Norla, they call them, the wealth deities, during a summer course. It was, can you imagine this? It was the most subscribed course of all time. Everyone wanted to take that course. And Rinpoche did not take the aspect of being pleased. He said, what did they think? That they can get wealth without creating the karma? The purpose of practicing the wealth deities, you know what the purpose is? Do you know, Venerable? Do they, like praying to Vaisravana, or we say Namtose in Tibetan, or in these other wealth gods, or Jambala, or whatever?
To help that karma that we have to ripen.
I think you're right. That's my understanding. There may be also, with respect to some of them, offering bath to Jambala or something also creates some karma also, but creates a karmic connection with them that can help to ripen the karma that we have to receive resources. It's, in a sense, one of the perfections the Bodhisattvas tried to develop is the perfection of prayer, which allows them, when they reach a certain level, just whatever they wish for, pray for, by the force of their aspiration, that can cause their karma for that to ripen and manifest. Right? So before we have that, we may have to rely on outer methods like this, like wealth deities and so forth. But it is definitely depleting your source of your collection of merit by doing so. So if you do it, Rinpoche's point was that if you did this simply for the happiness of this lifetime, there was no great purpose. The great reason for doing this, like Lama Tsongkhapa, after his long retreat, what was it, how many years did he do retreat? 6-year retreat, I think, when he did all these, he did 100,000 prostrations to each of the 35 Buddhas, and
I think it was more than that, George. It was 9 or 13 years.
yeah, 9 or 13 years. So long time with some other disciples, and made many hundreds of thousands of mandala offerings and other things. Saw the Buddhas, during this time of purification and collecting merit. Afterwards, when they were leaving, they found a temple that had been abandoned or run down, and there was a statue of Maitreya, the future Buddha, that had fallen into disrepair. Do you know this, right? This story? No. I'm just saying. No, listen. And so they didn't have any research. They had been in retreat for, like, as Venerable says, 9 years or whatever, and they had nothing. So what they did was some passerby, some pilgrim saw them and offered them some butter. And with that butter, they made offerings to the wealth deities. And due to that, they'd accumulated incredible merit. People started streaming in and gave them offerings, and they were able to renovate the temple and the statue and put a crown on the Maitreya, a jeweled crown on the Maitreya statue. And that was considered one of the great deeds of Lama Tsongkhapa in his life. You can read in his biography. There's a very good biography, if you get a chance, that we have in the books from the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives on Lama Tsongkhapa.
I'm sorry, who are you talking about? Are you talking about Lama Zopa or Lama Tsongkhapa?
Lama Tsongkhapa.
Oh, okay.
Lama Tsongkhapa. Mhm. So, yeah.
George, can I ask?
Yes, please.
So on the other hand, when you displease the guru, is it mainly that your practice is not meritorious? Is that the main thing?
The different things, I think, my own experience of displeasing the gurus always comes back on me. I think, one of the verses we had before was, when all of the gurus are displeased with you, there was some kind of sign. Sometimes when particular teachers are displeased with us, it may be particular karma we have with them, or they have a particular thing they're trying to teach us. I remember with various other people and myself, sometimes certain lamas would seem to be very wrathful with someone, but it wasn't that they were really displeased with them. They were trying to get that person past a particular threshold. I remember Lama Yeshe. Lama Yeshe often appeared to be so kind. Everyone thought Lama was so kind. But if you were a very close disciple of Lama, Lama could be so, cut right to the core of your ignorance. Could be very wrathful. And that depended on your closeness and your faith. Then the guru could do that. Sometimes if we don't have faith, the guru has to step back. They can't be wrathful. They have to treat us with, what do we call it? Kid gloves? Kid gloves? Tender, okay, that's okay. I can't, okay, you're not ready yet. So I have to, I can't. Even I say one word of advice to you, you take as, as abuse or something. So one has to be very careful. But sometimes when one is ready, the guru may seem displeased, but we can see that as, especially when our teachers are displeased with us, it's one of the greatest ways of purifying negative karma. If we don't get angry in return, we've lost the opportunity. But if we see that as an opportunity, because that object is so heavy, even if they're not a Buddha, even because of their kindness in teaching us, their heavy object of karma, and any criticism or unhappiness. What was the word you said when the gurus are unhappy or something with us? We displease them. That gives us an opportunity of purifying negative karma. There's in the teachings on guru devotion, there's a very famous verses that come in many different ways. One particular one, kind of that someone was being constantly abused by his teacher. And the other disciples came to him and said, oh, you must feel really terrible. The teachers, they're really bad. They're always criticizing you. He said, no, when they beat me, I feel they are giving me empowerment. When they say abuse to me, I feel it's like oral transmission of mantra, wrathful mantra. So to see the actions that way, or even if we don't have that kind of view of our teachers, if it's a more mundane view, just to see that because they're heavy objects of karma, we have an opportunity of purifying negative karma. But if we retaliate or we get displeased ourselves, our ego, what's the usual word? What do we call it when someone is displeased with us? What's the reaction usually? What would our reaction be? Unhappiness, defensiveness, or I'm thinking of sort of a reactive kind of thing, proactive. Indignant, yeah, indignant. What do you mean? Me? I didn't make it, what's wrong? I didn't make it. When we react that way, we're just creating the cause again in the future to have that same kind of thing. So if we can put it on our self-cherishing thought instead, put that suffering on the self-cherishing thought, doesn't say the other. In doing so, you don't have to think, I'm not going to give them peace of mind. I'm not going to take who do they think they are? They've made the mistake. if we think that way, we're losing the opportunity to practice, to purify. Actually, when our mind is a little more calm, we may actually see they have something that was very valid that they were saying, that in our state of indignation or depression, we couldn't hear, because our self-cherishing thought was so strong. So to use that, all of those occasions of the past also, when we go back over them, even though we might have acted inappropriately at some time, when we go back, we can purify that negative karma. It's like all of the garbage of our life we can use for fertilizer for our realizations, the things that have happened in the past.
Do we ever really actually displease the Guru's?
Well, if you consider the actual Guru being the emanation of the omniscient mind that manifests through either pure actual emanations of Buddha or as vehicles through our non-realized teachers, still it's through the vehicle of the omniscient mind. They're not really displeased. But there's certain, in the sense of the difference, of being, what really pleases the Guru is when we're practicing virtue. So if we're not practicing virtue, could you say that even the Buddha would be displeased?
Always displeased with us when we're not practicing virtue.
It's not as like that, oh God, Bonnie, George, oh. I don't think the Buddhas have that, they don't have conceptual mind like that. But when we talk about in terms of our, when the physical manifestations appear in the world, sometimes they seem to be more pleased with us when we're practicing virtue. Sometimes they seem to be pleased with people that we don't think are practicing virtue, but maybe because those are beginners that need to be treated with a tender, loving care and the kid gloves. Maybe their displeasure with us is a way of helping us to purify negative karma. I know some of my gurus, Serkon Senshab Rinpoche, used to be very wrathful with some of his disciples also sometimes, completely criticize them in public, yet in other circumstances so loving. You knew that he was a great loving being. So displeasing in the sense that one of the karma, the negative karmas that we create by displeasing the teachers, displeasing the gurus, is that our own mind will be disturbed and depressed, as we had in some earlier ones. When we displease the gurus' minds, sometimes depression comes, unhappiness comes. Let's go a little bit further, okay? And we'll come back to that. 38. When my companions mistreat me for being ugly, it is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for venting my rage by erecting ugly images. I don't think they have the translation exactly right here. There might have been a comma in there originally. From now on I shall erect images of the gods and be slow to anger. So when my companions, core means sort of like surrounding beings, my entourage, or those my companions, you could say, those around me, criticize me for having a bad, not a pleasant appearance, being ugly, it says here. It's due to Kusuk Nensheng having erected poor quality statues, images of the Buddha, and Kondro Trukbayi, that means due to having agitated, here it says, venting my rage. It almost looks, the way that they have it here, is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for venting my rage by erecting. I think you could take it, there should maybe a comma between, there's two different things. It's not talking about just one thing, venting my rage by erecting ugly images. That wouldn't make much sense. Do you see what I mean? It's actually two different things. By erecting poor images and by disturbing due to anger, being disturbed by anger. So from now on, I will erect images, La Sheng, of the deities, of the gods, of the Buddhas and so forth, and Nangyu Ringbarja, that means I will be I will have a very good character or disposition, which can also mean be slow to anger. Ngengyu can mean character or personality, but Nengyu Ringbo can mean patient or tolerant or good-natured. So from now on, I will do these two things. I will make statues, images of the Buddha, and I will try to be patient and have a good disposition, not always be angry. Here's it, slow to anger. Okay. Were you going to say something, buddy?
I was just going to say Geshe had like a little story in the commentary. That's illustration.
Let's read that. What was Geshe say here? Which page is that?
148.
148, okay. So there's a story in the sutras of a monk who had a very beautiful voice. Oh, you know this story, right? His voice was so beautiful that the elephants would stop outside his house just to listen to him. That'd be interesting. One time a king riding on an elephant passed the monk's house. All of a sudden the elephant stopped to listen to the monk who was in his room chanting. The king had not wanted to stop and wondered why the elephant did so. The king then heard the monk's beautiful voice, and wanting to see the person who was chanting, went into the house. What he saw was a monk with a very small, crooked, ugly body. He couldn't imagine how the same person could have such a beautiful voice. An ugly body and a beautiful voice seemed totally incongruous. He asked the Buddha about this, and the Buddha gave this explanation. He said that a long time ago, after the passing of the previous Buddha, Kashyapa, this monk was a worker building an enormous stupa. He was tired and always complained about the work and was very negative about his job. Sound familiar? However, when the stupa was completed, he changed his mind about it. Feeling satisfaction that the work had been very well done, he bought a beautiful sounding bell for the stupa. These actions gave rise to different results. Because of his ill temper about building the stupa, he obtained a small and ugly body. But because he latter rejoiced in the stupa and offered a beautiful bell to adorn it, he obtained a beautiful voice. So I think that could be, maybe that could also be, as I was saying there, venting my rage by erecting ugly images. Still, I don't think, there's no verb in between, but it may be alluding to that particular famous episode. It's supposed to have been during the building of the stupa in, I think, Bodhanath or Swayambhu. Do you know? When one of the great stupas was being erected way, way back at the time after the last Buddha, Kashyapa, and this worker was, thinking, oh, God, what are they building such a big stupa for? Was carrying more work to do. And with that negative mind, he created the karma. Because of his mind being disturbed while erecting the image, Kusuk Niansheng, he created the karma to have this ugly form. Yet, due to the karma of offering the bell to the stupa, he had this beautiful voice.
Venerable George, is that stupa still standing today?
The original one, I think, may have been built over many times. So I'm not sure. I don't know if any of the atoms that we see on the outside are the atoms that were in the original stupa, but maybe the core of that, from what I understand, that location was under, and at a certain point in the history, that was all underwater. It said in Kathmandu Valley, and only Swayambhu, the hill where Swayambhu was above water, it was kind of like an island, but Bodhanath was below water. But they were stupas that were built during the time of previous Buddha.
I ask because I'm trying to get an understanding of how long it was between Shakyamuni and the Buddha that came before him. My understanding is that it's a very long time.
Yes. So that stupa, if we go now to Kathmandu and we see those stupas, we might say, well, it doesn't look like it's more than a couple hundred years old, or maybe 800 or something like that. But it could have been built on from previous stupas, from time immemorial.
Are we saying that the previous Buddha before Shakyamuni came between the time when life formed on the earth and where we are now? So
well, which Buddha is Shakyamuni? Do you know, of this fortunate eon?
The fourth.
is the fourth Buddha. Kashyapa was the third. There were still two Buddhas before them. Before, I can't remember, one of them was called, like Atisha Marmaitse, and I don't remember what the other Buddha's name was, of first to second. Do you know? Yeah. So the period, you can try to calculate. There are in some of the texts it says what the lifespan was, human lifespan, when Kashyapa was here. Might have been, do you know, Georgie? How long might have been 80,000 years or 20,000 years lifespan. So you might say, well, that's impossible because humans have been getting longer lifespans. But this is talking about when people had a different kind of body before we took birth in this kind of physical body like the apes. If you calculate, you can get a rough idea, I think, because the lifespan of the humans goes down 1 year every 100 years. So from 20,000 down to 100, which is essentially where we are now, it would be 20,000 times 100, right? What would it be? 20,000, 200,000, 2 million years ago, something like that. So that would be quite prehistoric times. So it might have been, even the stupa might have been something that was more, maybe not, maybe it was something that was made of material that was much more godlike. I don't know the story. Okay. So when you're mistreated for being ugly, one of the things, one of the ways that you can create the karma to be ugly, to be attractive, as we were saying before, is to have patience, to be slow to be angry, as Venerable said, and also to create images of the deities. So that's one of the causes. If you have the desire to be very attractive in order, for good reason, to be charismatic and to attract people to the Dharma. 39, when lust and hate are stirred up, no matter what I do, it is a weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for hardening my malevolent evil mind. Obstinacy. From now on, I shall totally extirpate you. That doesn't roll so easily off my non-literary tongue. Okay? 39. So when, at the time whenever when we're disturbed by attachment and anger, whatever we do, we're either attached or we're angry. That's probably my state usually. It is the wheel of my own evil deeds turned upon me for hardening my malevolent evil mind. Marungyunyan Rengsu Chukpai, for instituting a sort of a rigid, bad disposition, sort of incorrigible, in the past, sort of like we just did what we wanted to, we didn't take any advice. Hardening my malevolent evil mind. So recognizing that, in other words, we didn't apply the antidotes before. How are we going to expect now to control our mind if we didn't apply the antidotes in the past? Geshe Dargye used to say, we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves when we recognize, we practice for some time and we think, oh, my mind is still negative, I still get angry, I still have attachment. We've been familiarizing with these things since beginningless time. The only way that we're ever going to get to the point where the antidotes become strong enough to overcome them is through familiarity, applying the antidotes now. So in the past we've been, what's the word here? Obstinate, obdurate, what was the word they used?
He uses obstinate.
Obstinacy, from now on I shall totally, right? Hardening my malevolent evil mind is mean rigid and just not applying any antidotes, just in the past. So if we want to be able to change that, we have to change the way that we think and start to apply the antidotes now. One of my teachers, Geshe Jampa Gyatso in Italy, who I was with for many years there, Geshe taught us so many of the texts, these kind of texts and others. And Geshe used to say, as is said in the teachings, when you find your mind, angry, you're getting angry all the time, you have to apply the antidote. Otherwise, it's like the case of having the medicine, you know about these things, but you're carrying the medicine on your back in a big sack, but you're never taking it. You can have all the teachings in the world, but unless you put them into practice, it's not going to help you. So, which one is this? I jump. This is what, 30, 39? So Dani Reng Ke, you sort of rock-like mind. I'm going to take you out from the root. What do they call it? Extirpate you. I shall remove you, you obstinate mind, from the root. So that obstinate mind has to do with self-cherishing thought, isn't it? That's kind of like one of the things that causes that obstinacy. Thinking we're right, not seeing any other alternative but to criticize the others. So, 40, when none of my practices reach their goal, it is a weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for internalizing a pernicious view. From now on, whatever I do shall be solely for the sake of others. When none of my practices reach their goal, Drupa Kangche Miksu Masongse, when we don't reach our aim, whatever we practice, mikpa means our aim or our goal, Tawa Nyenpa Koktu Shupai, it is due to having set up, instituted internally bad views. What does it say here? Internalizing a pernicious view. Well, it means all the wrong views, all bad views. Tawa Nyenpa means those. Remember when we talked about the mental factors in the other class, there are different kinds of bad views. When we talk about the 6 root delusions, I tried to raise 5 fingers. There's 6 root delusions, right? 6 root delusions. One of the delusions is called afflicted view, and there are 5 of them. So sometimes we can talk about 10 delusions, 5 non-views, like ignorance, attachment, anger, pride, and deluded doubt, afflicted doubt. And then there are 5 afflicted views. So I think it's talking about these afflicted views, especially the view of the transitory collection, ego grasping, and other kinds of wrong views, holding oneself as supreme and so forth. So when we don't reach our goal, it's because of our wrong views that we've held in the past. So from now on, and that the particular view here that may be, is the view of the view of the transitory collection. That means the ego grasping toward the self and all of its offshoots. So from now on, chiche, whatever I do, I shall do for the welfare, solely for the welfare of others. Usually what we do is always for our own egocentric view. And so it's not surprising that we don't achieve our own goals, whatever we do. 41, when I cannot control my own mind, even though I engage in religious activity, here actually this is gejor, when I practice virtue, even though I'm practicing virtue, if I'm unable to control my own continuum, my own mind, it is the wheel of my own evil deeds turned upon me for concentrating on my own aggrandizement. I'm learning a lot today in this present life. This is the wheel of sharp weapons for not studying grammar in high school, isn't it? I didn't know. Aggrandizement. Wow. Sedi chetap dangdu langwai. So I found some other words better than that. It's when we kind of we seek glorification. We give priority to our own glory. Yeah, is that yeah, to make ourselves grand? Okay, is that what aggrandizement means? Sorry. So from now on, I shall concentrate on the desire for liberation. So here we're talking especially about the 8 worldly dharmas, right? You know what the 8 worldly dharmas are? Beth, do you know the 8 worldly dharmas?
Let's see, wanting to be happy, not wanting to be unhappy, wanting to hear, this is just one place I saw it. But,
Okay.
wanting to hear interesting sounds, not wanting to hear uninteresting sounds. Wanting to be, being happy when acquiring material things, happy when not acquiring material things.
Wow.
Wanting praise and not wanting criticism.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Did you hear that? So the pleasant sound, sometimes it's translated as the desire to be famous and to avoid being infamous. My teacher, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, translates it, maybe that's where you saw the list. He said, in a more general way, it means desiring to hear sweet, ego-pleasing words and sounds, not just pleasant sounds in general, ego-pleasing, such as fame, to be famous and so forth. And that's different than the desire to be praised. That's another one, to be praised, to avoid blame, to desire pleasure of the senses, so not just happiness, but to desire pleasure of the senses. Most of our time goes into doing that. We seek pleasure of the senses in various ways. We seek material things, gaining material things, and avoid losing them. Big thing if we lose anything, right? We lose the opportunity. Some people are our stockbrokers are all day long. They're trading their stock, afraid to lose a little bit of money. Have you seen people like that? It's kind of frightening. And we desire to be praised all the time, isn't it? And avoid any kind of blame. If anyone blames us for anything, our self-cherishing mind, our ego-grasping rebels against that. And we desire to hear sweet, ego-pleasing words, like to be famous, to see your name in the newspaper. That's not so much being praised, is it? You went to a party and you went to say, did they mention I was there? Oh, did you mention I was there at the party? Are you invited to the party? Being pleasing to the ego. What's the most pleasing thing to our ego? I think the words, I love you. So much of our lives go into seeking hearing that particular ego-pleasing phrase. Many people, And if you think about it that way, it's sort of shocking sometimes, because we think, when I was talking in San Francisco recently, one of the students' wives was there, and we were talking about what's necessary for life. We said, we agreed, most essential thing was oxygen. You couldn't live for more than a couple of minutes without oxygen, right? Or air. Then, what's more important, water or food? Water. Probably water. Without, I don't know, how long could you live? A couple of weeks or something like that. Food, maybe you could live a couple of months even. Warmth, extremes of warmth and cold, that's somewhere in there too. If it's really extreme, it might be after oxygen, right? And then I said, is there anything else that you really need to live? This was talking about the meditation on death and impermanence. And this one lady said, love. We need love. And in a certain extent, you can see that children, and in our own lives, if we don't, with our fragile egocentric minds, if we don't receive love, it seems like, life's not worth living. A bodhisattva, on the other hand, they live to give love, not to receive love. So it's interesting. I think why don't you think about this next week? How much time of our life is gone into seeking love when we're kids, and when we're growing up, when our hormones are especially, dominating the scene, and we confuse that with love and so forth, or just the emotional level, wanting to be loved. How many stories have we gotten into life stories, wanting to be loved. They don't love me. Do they love me? I love you, I love you. He loves me, she loves me, she loves me not. All of these. That's one of the 8 worldly dharmas. That might be a tough pill to swallow. I don't know. What do you think?
Mixed in with like ignorant love, though, couldn't you say that you need others, like even bodhisattvas, you need others to practice? So even if you have that compassionate, not self-centered love, there's objects.
For us to love, yeah, that's what I said. The bodhisattvas, they live to love others. But the 8 worldly dharma is the desire, craving to hear sweet ego-pleasing words. Our lives dominated by that for a large extent. We can't take that with us. It's that pleasure that we get from that is fleeting and sometimes illusory.
Ain't that the truth?
There we go. Excuse me. Don't want to, don't want to offend anyone, but yeah, ain't that the truth? Yeah.
I'm just wondering if we can truly love if we've never received love.
I think we can. I think one of the fortunate things is that we probably we have been loved in numberless lives. Like a lot of times people say, I can't practice now renunciation until I've had some kind of relationship. I can't become monk or nun. I remember having some excuse like that when I was at Kopan and telling Lama Zopa Rinpoche, I wanted to become a monk, but there was something I had to do first, which was the proverbial, to have a meaningful relationship, quote unquote. Not just some physical fling or something. And Rinpoche said, is that really what you want? And I realized, by the force of the Guru's holy speech, what I really wanted was to be happy. And when thinking about it, we project upon these outer things, the 8 worldly concerns, that they are the sources of happiness. They are the dharmas that can protect us from suffering. But really, what we really want is to be happy. And if we start to recognize, use that desire, transform that craving for these outer sources, we recognize we've been looking in the wrong direction for happiness. Okay? The real happiness comes about from loving others. We've been loved numberless lives. If we had to have another sexual encounter, another $1 million, before we could practice this lifetime, we'd never practice, ever. But through the force of meditation, we can begin to, through to our familiarity with these things, hearing the teachings, thinking about them, we can recall that we've experienced these things before. We know the truth of these things.
So you're saying, in a sense, we have, assuming it's been in other lives. I'm just thinking of my mom because, like, my parents gave me so much love
Right.
in this life, and my mom would point out to children who, in a way, haven't gotten that much love in this life, and maybe they're sort of messed up.
Sure,
That's
this is definitely the argument that this lady was talking about, because she was a social worker and knows this. Indeed, that's the observation. But I'm talking about from a mature point of view of a Dharma practitioner. I'm not talking about that we say, oh, children, they don't need love. Don't love them. I'm not saying that. That's completely misinterpreting what I'm saying. I may sound like, maybe I didn't express it, but I'm talking about someone who is a Dharma practitioner, who's already thinking about, what am I doing with my life? Oh, so much of my energy seeking affirmation outside, outer love. This is what everyone wants. What I should be doing is giving this to others. Then that will come unbidden, There will be people loving me to bits, if I love others. Look at the Dalai Lama. There are more people that love the Dalai Lama, I think, than George Bush, or his wife and his children maybe love him, I hope. But the Dalai Lama, who loves everyone, he doesn't have to. He's not seeking that love. He's not doing his actions so that he gets love, but it will come back to him. So let me just mention the next one here. Which number did we get up to? 38? No. Oh.
We're going on to 41 right now.
Oh, good. When I cannot control my own mind, even though I engage in religious activity, is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for concentrating on my own aggrandizement in this present life. Okay, So we just talked about, from now on I shall concentrate on the desire for liberation. So instead of seeking happiness and, how do you say, satisfaction, protection from suffering by seeking the 8 worldly dharmas, because dharma means that which supports you from suffering. The worldly dharmas are that which worldly people think protect them from suffering. Having sweet ego, pleasing words, always being praised, never being blamed. Can't stand that. All of these things don't make it possible. They make it impossible to really be practicing Dharma, no matter what tantric initiations or teachings we attend. 42. When I despair, as soon as I've sat down and reflected, is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for shamelessly flitting about from one new friend of high status to another. From now on, I shall be serious about my friendships with everyone. I'll just say one last thing. Before we dedicate, one of my friends and Dharma friends in New Zealand mentioned she was on her 3rd marriage, and she was thinking of breaking up. And one of the gurus told her, or she heard, it wasn't aimed directly at her. She heard, beware of the oft married, what do you call someone who's a divorcee? Something like that, beware of them. And she said, oh my gracious, And she realized that that fickle kind of mind, never being satisfied, always trying to find someone better, never, and at a certain point reaching, not being satisfied, so she was able to stick with her partner after that. Let's stop here. We'll go over that again next time. And let's meditate for a few moments to try to dedicate the merit that we've created. So in watching the mind, watching the clear light in nature, see if you can start to identify this spaciousness with a deeper meaning as you let go of the ego. And if you've had some beginning understanding of emptiness, to recognize this spaciousness as the non-inherent existence of the self. The merits that we've created this evening through listening with good mind, with concentration, putting up with difficulty, even if the words might seem to have injured our ego or our pride, that virtue can't be found anywhere either. It's also just a name. It's empty. But it can be dedicated. It does have an efficacy. Going back to the conventional level, due to these merits, may I quickly develop good heart, overcome my faults, become a Buddha, a guru for everyone, for the sake of everyone. That state itself also, although it appears as concrete and findable, can't be found when sought. It's empty of existing inherently, as is the action of dedicating. Try to seal the dedication in the emptiness of the 3 spheres. And if you get a chance, think about the 8 worldly dharmas, especially. I'd be interested to hear your feedback next week. Do we really, I agree, so in terms of raising children and so forth, and other people, we recognize we give love to others because they do need it, they do sense that. But do we really need love to live? Should it be such a high priority on our list of what we spend our life energy to hear that sweet ego-pleasing phrase, or to know that there are people out there that care for us?
There's levels of it, whether it's self-love or the idea of doing what we need to do. But yeah, I would say we have to have love.